How you doing, folks? We're on the part 6 of my refight of Brandywine, GMT's Great Battles of the American Revolution. Having a blast so far. This is my first go with the series. I've actually played some practice games, but this is my first go at an actual full scenario with the system. And I have to say, I am enjoying it. But here's a look at what's going on. In the last episode, I ended at halfway through turn 4, I think. We finished the British player's turn completely, and we got through about halfway through the Patriots' turn. They were the second player to go, the British going first. And we did their movement and their rally phases, which there was no rallies to do for them, I don't believe. And that was it. I left it there. However, I did resolve the close combats, the shooting, defensive artillery, all that off camera, and I'll give you the results of that here in a second. But just a slight recap, if anyone missed it, I highly recommend seeing the introduction to this battle report if it's interesting to you. I do have it, and then just followed by a part 1 and 2 and 3 and so on. But go check the introduction. And I also have a rules introduction, which I posted quite a while ago, actually, on the series. And I cover all the basics of the rules mechanics. And yeah, you might want to check those. They're linked in the description below. So there's that. But to recap from where we left off, we have part of Sullivan's wing. As you can see, it's pretty thin down here. They've moved up a force in this direction under Sterling, and they are intent on occupying this position over here at Birmingham Hill and Birmingham Meeting House. They want to put up a defense for anticipating the arrival of Howe's forces to the north, which is that direction along that road he's going to be approaching. And he's got quite a sizable force on the way, so it should be interesting to see if Sterling can hold out. So there is that. Other big events is that Sullivan, during turn 4, released the army, giving up 2 victory points to do so. And basically what that allows the Americans to do is move out of their bivouac area. Basically, we're assuming that Washington is acting immediately on the rumors that Howe is on the way from the north. So what would have happened? That's what we're seeing here today. At least what could have happened, in my opinion. The way I'm playing it, anyway. So there is that. He gave up 2 victory points to the British to do that. But again, we're after the decisive win. We're not worried about victory points, at least at this point. Also, during turn 4, the Patriots were able to move across the Brandywine Creek, which they did. Well, they could have done that because Sullivan released the army. But prior to that, Greene could have moved across the Brandywine, and he would have given up victory points to do so. In other words, in turns 1, 2, and 3, if he gave up victory points, he could cross the Brandywine in this location. I never did that. I just waited till turn 4, where Sullivan would release the entire army, and then I could move anywhere. So that's where we're at this point. However, as you will notice, Greene has a pretty sizable force he crossed with. In fact, there might be some reprimands coming his way for taking half the army with him across that creek. But this is the fun of playing this game, my friends. What if? So basically, yeah, he has a sizable force of his wing that have crossed the Brandywine, basically launching a counterattack. It's really the only way to describe it. I'm thinking perhaps he's not aware of the approach of Howe and feels this is the actual main British army, the main attack, and he sees a weak flank, and he's currently attacking it. Of course, at the same time, he's supporting Maxwell, who previously, in our last episode, was located here. And he no longer is, and I'll show you why. Like I said, I did do the defensive artillery fire for the British, and I did do some rifle fire also for the British. There was no other units involved for rifle shooting. And the artillery was all ineffective. You can see here there is some cannons here to have been considered, which were out of range, and this one was out of line of sight of targets, so they weren't to be considered. There was some point-blank fire down here on Maxwell's position, which was here originally. He's back here, by the way. And believe it or not, that was totally ineffective as well. These 2 batteries, in fact, are actually stacked with these units. And I don't know why I'm stacking them, because I'm just going to unstack them again. But yeah, they were here in this location. Fire was totally ineffective. Breastworks were a big help for Maxwell in that case. So there was that going on. And rifle fire was next, simultaneous for both sides. And there was no one else, just Ferguson's rifles, which are located here. They decided to fire on Maxwell's open flank here. There's no breastworks to protect him. So it was actually a good choice, a good position to occupy for Ferguson, because the net result was Maxwell was disrupted, his force anyway, which was a strength 3 light infantry unit, fell back 3 hexes, disrupted, and currently occupies this hex. Maxwell chose to go with him. And that's where he is, folks. That is unfortunate. They gave up an army morale point for that as well because of the disruption. Not good. And this position is now undefended. So, yeah. This position, behind Maxwell's position, included this artillery battery, but also included this unit, which was, or still is, a Strength 1 Pennsylvania State Foot. And, yeah, during the close combat segment for the Americans, they basically had to attack because they're adjacent and in the zone of control of Ferguson's. So the combat had to take place. There was no way out of it. He would be the attacker, and so on and so forth. His attack petered, he lost, and he was disrupted for his efforts, and again fell back 3 hexes. Where was he? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Was he here or here? I think he was here. Well, close enough. He crossed at the ford there, which is a primary ford. And then there was no overstacking there either. And I believe this is where, no, that's not where green is. Where did he go? 1, 2, 3. Actually, he was in this location. That's where he was. And again, that's a primary ford as well. And this is, there was no overstacking here either to move through that. So that was the disrupted unit's retreat, leaving the guns undefended, basically. But because the British are not the attacking player here, because it's the phasing player is actually the Patriots, the initiative player, I should say. The initiative player is the one who's considered the attacker in this combat. And there was no advance after combat for the defender. They don't make advances after combat. So they couldn't capture the guns. Hope that wasn't confusing. I kind of worded that funny. But yeah, this is the situation. So undefended, guns pretty much undefended. When the British get a chance, they're going to capture those guns and take these works so that the Americans can't claim them again. So in that respect, things went pretty good for the British. Hausen isn't so bad off at the moment either. He does have a unit down here, which, if you remember, was disrupted earlier from the attack up the slopes on Maxwell's position. So this is the case. This is the situation we are in. There was, of course, if I can go over here slow, I don't want to go too fast. There was, of course, a combat here near the ferry, or Britain's Ford, actually. It wasn't a ferry. These dragoons were located here. These guys were located here. And Americans were forced to attack. They did so. The dragoons withdrew. Now, there's rules for this. You can't actually... He has to withdraw, you move 3 hexes following the same restrictions as a retreat. Normally, he would have to go this way. He couldn't go this way because this hex is still the zone of control of this unit. And you can't do that. You can't retreat into a zone of control of an enemy. I was curious about that, but he couldn't do that. So we put him down this way. He doesn't have to cross the river at this point either. There's penalties for doing that. I think he becomes disrupted and stuff. So we just kept him going, the full 3, which is, let's see, 1, 2, 3. And he's currently located in this position. Now, I believe I did that right. Again, this is my first go with this game, but the way I read the rules, that's the way this would have been handled regarding the dragoons making a retreat move from this hex. They just couldn't go here. So yeah, that's that. And this unit, being the attacker, did advance after the combat. He's occupying that position. So, doesn't look great for the British, at least at this point. This was a bad decision, I think, for the British to make here. They captured it. They held it for a little bit, fell back. He's got a stack of disrupted units here now. Grey has been disgraced. So that's pretty fun. And his dragoons are on the other side of the Brandywine here, kind of trapped, wondering what's going on. And finally, there was a combat over here. If I could slowly pan the camera. And we got pin results. And this was an interesting combat in the sense that these two stacks of Patriot troops, that's a Strength 6 unit. The 2nd Pennsylvania Brigade, the old red trousers, they did, that's a big unit. That's a strong, powerful unit. Over here, this stack also amounts to a total of 6 strength points. No militia, straight up, 12 against strength 4. They had to attack. They did so. We used some, or I used some of these cards here. And of course, the Patriots got stand fast. The British got skirmish. And let's see, stand fast, you're attacking at skirmish, +1. Whoops. So it was a benefit to the Patriots in this case. If we look over here, those were the odds and total modifiers I had. So there was a +1 from tactics, -2 because the King's Own, which is the regiment for the British, they have a +2 morale modifier, which is red in reverse. In this case, so it'll be a -2 to the combat roll. And yeah, that was that. The Patriots didn't do very well in that one, and the result was everybody was pinned. Like I said earlier, there was momentum gained and things like that. And, where this occurred, I believe there was a combat. I think it was with Ferguson's. Yeah, it actually was. If we go back down there again. Just like that. This combat here where Ferguson and this infantry unit back here, when they were fighting their close combat, the initial roll, I believe, or the initial result was a -1 for the Patriots. And they decided to use their momentum chip that they had captured earlier to get a reroll. And they did so. And they got a much better result. I remember it. It was a 9 once again. So that was very good result for them, and they were gladly going to take that. However, when that point came around again to use momentum, the British, who also had momentum, used one of his, and that forced another reroll. Basically, it forces you to go back to the resolve the close combat step, which is followed by the momentum step. That's where you use momentum to force rerolls. And it keeps going up and down as many times as people are using momentum. Once per, you can only do it once though. There has to be that momentum phase in between expenditures. And there's little rules to it, but I won't go into it in too much detail here. But needless to say, the British spent a momentum to change that roll again. And I think the result was a 4. Something like that. So in the end, it wasn't good for this position right here. And, was it worth throwing away some momentum just for this position? I'd say yes, because it's, it's the only foothold the Patriots have at this point of that high ground. And really, you want to control that high ground if you're going to fight across this Brandywine Creek area. So it's kind of important in my opinion. But it didn't work out for the Patriots. So that's that. Yeah. And go back to these units once again. Yeah, they got a pinned result. All these units that were fighting, including the British unit, and all the units in that stack, and those Pennsylvania red trouser guys, they're all pinned. So the next phasing player, whoever that is going to have a choice. Either attack with a pinned unit against pinned units, and other units can join. There's special rules for this resolution. Or during the movement phase, he can actually move out of there. But he loses an army morale point, I believe, by doing so. So it's kind of risky. He kind of should resolve this. But it all comes down to who has initiative in the next turn 5, to see who's going to attack and if they really want to. But anyway, these guys are all marked with pin. They're basically still fighting it out. So that's the situation with close combat. The rifle fire and the artillery, the defensive artillery fire for the British. So now, with the British with 2 momentum chips and the Americans with none, we're going to go to initiative for turn 5 and see who goes first. So each side rolls a d10. Again, I'll roll this for you guys. And nobody's going to use any momentum for this, not in this case. Again, the only one with momentum is the British, and they have 2. I'm going to hold on to that. And they're going to add their army morale modifier to initiative, which is +1 because both sides are in high morale. this zone. So let's roll this and see who's going to get initiative. An 8 and a 2. So it looks like the Patriots, and it looks like the Patriots are going to get it. So, yeah, 8 plus 1 is 9, 2 plus 1 is 3. That's about it. And no momentum were used. So, Patriots are going to have initiative going into this turn. So now we come over here to the game tracker. We're going to flip this to the Patriots side and put it on the top half of the turn track. And when it's the second player's turn, this is flipped and drop down to the second half of the turn track. That's basically how it works on here. So we're on Patriots side and we're on the top half of turn 5. It's about 12 p.m. in the afternoon. The only reinforcements are Americans. We've got some troops here. Does that say Bland's horse? I can't read it too well. And Moylan's horse, 2 horse units for the Patriots. They're going to be coming on at point D, which is right in front of Howe. Right up in this area right here. That's where they're going to come. So these are placed first. Whoop, not that guy. These 2 units. They're the only reinforcements. So they're placed on that entry hex, and they'll be able to move on. Or delay, but there's no point to doing that. Interesting, there was some discussion amongst some of the players of this game. Just today, I think. Actually, somebody brought up a question about, can they stay there since you can delay your entry? And if they stay there, will that keep Howe from entering? Because normally you can't get on that way. But the answer to it was quite simple, really, and I thought of this myself, but in the scenario rules themselves, it basically says, let's turn to it here. For this scenario, Brandywine. Where is it? All right, there it is. I don't know why that took me forever to find. It's one of those little rules that's like just snuck in between the lines, as you can see. Rule 3621, Radley Run. And it's just one sentence, it's one sentence rule. That's as simple as it is, and this is the answer to that question. No American unit may end its movement phase north of Radley Run. This is Radley Run. This is north. So that would include these guys. They cannot set on that entry hex. They have to move out of it. So they have no choice. So that was just something interesting that I spotted today amongst other players. The GMT group. Quite interesting. So this is where we're at, folks. We are currently in the movement phase for the Patriots. And that's a good thing for them because they're going to be able to fix their position over here on the far right where green is, if they want to pull some troops back before the British can do anything, or capitalize on this initiative and rush forward and seize that high ground, which I think would be a good choice, if you ask me. One thing I should discuss as far as tactics and strategy is concerned is that, I don't know, I think, looking at it from the standpoint of the Patriots, I really did intend to get pretty aggressive with green and come across. But at the same time, this kind of slipped my mind at that point. I also wanted to use green's wing to kind of shore up the defenses, where Sullivan is now kind of thinned out. And I kind of forgot that. And I threw a lot of troops across the river in this counterattack. So I think what's going to happen here is I am going to withdraw some troops. It was a little mistake on my part. It could still be fixed, thankfully, because the Patriots have initiative. I will pull some of them troops back. But my thinking here is that by coming across in force like this and seizing the high ground where Maxwell previously was located, it's going to give the British a really hard time coming up across that Brandywine Creek outside of a primary ford. They still have secondary fords located here, and they still have this primary ford, but look what happened there. I mean, it was just a disaster. But there was no commitment to an attack there either, so it's still a possibility. But that said, we don't want to be that far away from our objective. For Kniphausen's force, we want to get this point right here, which is Proctor's battery position. And by seizing that, we're going to deny the Americans any chance at a decisive victory. Yeah, so, and hopefully be able to move further east and take that victory point leading to Philadelphia. Along that gray road there, that's a pike. Right up there is the victory point. So this really does affect my strategy for the British. So yeah, I think I'm going to have to rethink some of my thoughts here for the British and what they're going to do. But it's not their turn yet, as far as I'm concerned. They're going to continue doing like I had planned. But for the Americans, I think I will continue the assault, the counterattack with Greene. He has been thoroughly reprimanded, I am sure. He will be in command. However, I will have some of those troops on his wing shift in this direction to kind of shore up the defenses here, because I really don't want to be so thinned out that the British are just literally going to walk across that creek. Although it would take time, I don't want to leave it undefended. I want them to pay for every inch they come to that creek. So that's that. And some other thoughts, and I see this video is becoming more of a thoughts and strategy discussion than a gameplay thing. Bear with me, folks. It is such a fantastic game. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I think what could end up happening, especially as this force moves north to take up defensive positions here, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see more and more of two separate armies, basically. You're going to see Sterling over here pretty much separated by this woods and distance from the rest of the army. And it's almost going to be like two different battles at a certain point. What I'm thinking is that we do have a fallback, a line to fall back on where Washington currently is. This nice high ground, wooded areas, the marshes which can't be moved through. There is a zone we can fall back on and still anchor a flank on Proctor's battery, which is out of camera shot right here. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, this could end up looking something like, all right, you've got the battle lines, again, out of camera shot. You've got the battle lines stretching for the Americans all the way up through this area, across the creek, up through Proctor's battery, or maybe up in here even, and stretching across this direction. I don't know. I have a feeling Sterling is going to be his own thing over here. I'm not really going to be connected with him. So Sullivan's force down here, I might just stay here, or it might fall back to Roundelay Hill, and this would be a defense line, and it wouldn't go any further. I don't know. It's just an interesting situation. We'll see what happens. I think I want to pull some troops from this wing and move them over slowly to help support at least Sullivan's defenses here along the river. I still have Washington with a pretty decent reserve back there on the hill. Don't intend to use him too soon. He's a pretty cool general. He's pretty strong, powerful, but he's got some decent units. But I definitely want to keep them as a reserve for that last-ditch effort in the battle, and to prevent Howe from sneaking any troops towards those objectives at the town, and of course to Philadelphia. That's what he wants to capture. And I don't want him sneaking any troops through the battle lines here and, getting behind me. And that's what Washington has his reserve for, at least one of the reasons. So, yeah. All right, folks, I'll tell you what. I'm going to end this video here. We're at the top of turn 5. Didn't really get to any new action, but I did show you guys some combats. And stay tuned. I'll have part 7 up soon. Thoroughly enjoying this. So this is turn 5, the start. It's the Patriots who are up first, and we're going to do their movements and see what troops I pull back from Greene's position, if any, and how I shore up the defenses here, or if I shift Sullivan's forces that way. I don't think I will, but we'll see what develops. It's going to be interesting. And the Patriots do have reinforcements, those 2 units of horse, strength 1 and strength 1. So they're probably going to use strategic movement down that road and get into a defensive position here and help out with the defense. So we'll See, folks. Like, share, subscribe. Let me know your feelings, thoughts, all your comments, all that good stuff. You want to see more of this kind of stuff? Let me know. You like this game? I love it. I don't know why you wouldn't. And if you want to see more, as always, let me know. So until next time, folks, hang in there. It's only going to get better. Take care.